Welcome to Elite Expert Insider Podcast, where we will inspire, motivate, and educate entrepreneurs, innovators, and growth seekers. Brought to you by Elite Online Publishing, making the best and brightest in the industry #1 best-selling authors. 80% of people say they want to write a book. We're assuming that's the same for you. If so, contact us at www.eliteonlinepublishing.com and make your book a reality. Hey everybody, it's Melanie Johnson here along with Jen Foster. Hey Jen, how you doing?
Hey everyone.
Hey, you know what? I just got to say, last month, Jen and I, we're just going to brag just a little bit. For Elite Online Publishing, we had an author a week that we were launching, and every single one became a #1 bestseller. So we were so busy. We want to congratulate all our authors. They did a great job, and it was just so awesome to see all of them going to #1 bestsellers. So we're hoping to keep that momentum going. And just want to mention, if you're looking to write a book or become an author, please reach out to us. Go to eliteonlinepublishing.com and you can hit that survey form under Contact Us and see if you qualify for us to work with you and make you a #1 best-selling author too. Join the momentum, join our family. We would love to hear from you. So we have a great podcast today. Gregg Clunis is here with us today. He's going to teach us how to crush our goals. He wrote this book called Tiny Leaps, Big Changes. And Jen and I both know from experience, it is those little things, those little shifts that can make a huge difference in your life. And Gregg says you can create the life you want by using these strategies and doing these things every single day. So welcome, Gregg. Not only does Gregg have a book, he has a podcast too, and he has a blog. He's got all kinds of stuff, but he is really going to enlighten us today. And if you take his advice, I guarantee it's going to change your life. Thanks for coming, Gregg.
Thank you so much for having me. This is amazing to be here, to finally connect with you guys. Also, congratulations. I know you congratulated your authors, but that is incredible. You guys should be incredibly proud for accomplishing such an incredible goal.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, let's dive right in. You know, it's the beginning of the year. Excuse my voice, but it's the beginning of the year. And, you know, a lot of people have gone on vacation. When you get back from vacation, you're a little bit tired and you're like, oh, I have to go back to work. I have to have rest for my vacation, right? So one of the things you talk about in your book is how to get motivated, how to get up and get going. So tell us a little bit about what we can do to stay motivated and get going for all of our goals we have set, you know, for the new year.
Yeah. So one of the key things that I try to explore in the book is that motivation is often not the problem. And so we approach motivation as this sort of like shot in the arm, like let's just spike our motivation levels for a little bit and we're going to take a ton of action and yada, yada, yada. The problem with that is that it is short term. And also that if you are making the choice to do something, whatever that might be, you're already plenty motivated. That's why you are able to make the choice. So if that's the case, what is the actual problem? But it's a follow-through problem. It's not actually motivation. And the struggle that we fall into here is that if we're trying to solve for motivation, that is a different solution than solving for follow-through. And so solving for follow-through is about building systems that enable you to make follow-through easier, to make consistent follow-through easier. Solving for motivation is watching videos in YouTube and podcasts and trying to cram like inspiration into it. And that's a completely different problem. So that's where I would start for everyone here, is really looking at, is the problem actually motivation? Or is it a follow-through issue and you now need to solve for something practical in that realm?
Oh my gosh, this is like everything I've been talking about with my teenage son, you know, not so much motivation to get the homework done and all that stuff. And we've identified, like, you want to point as a mom, that is motivation, but it's really the strategies to follow through and have the reminders. So, you know, we just got him a little watch that buzzes with all these reminders on him. So, and his phone's buzzing, his watch is buzzing, we have everything buzzing to keep him going. And I think there's so many great technical strategies. How do you keep, you know, life is such fast paced as well. So let's say you get the strategies in place, you get these things that you're going so you can do the follow through. Jen was just getting on my case because I had yawned before we did it. Like, Melanie, come on, snap out of it. It's early in the day. So how do you keep your energy level up? What are some tricks and tips to do that?
Yeah. So energy management, this is one of those things that I discovered maybe 2 or 3 years ago, like I never realized how big a problem energy management was until I decided, okay, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. And then once that shift happened, and I'm sure you guys have experienced this, I'm sure anyone listening to this has experienced this. That is basically your only asset as an entrepreneur. And so the ability to manage your energy is so incredibly important. What I've found to work best for me, and it's not always going to be the case for everyone, but and this is similar to the follow through problem. For me, it's about reducing friction as much as possible, because I'm a big fan of thinking about things in terms of mental strain and sort of psychic fatigue. The more you need to think about something, the harder it is going to be to do it, because you're draining all of your energy thinking about it, or debating, should I do it or not? And so if I can remove friction to do something and I can just get into it immediately, that reduces over the course of a day, a week, a month, my psychic strain by just a little bit every single time. And that adds up quite a bit. And so just as a very real example, in 2019, video is a bigger part of my platform.
Mhm.
And I've always struggled with staying consistent, even though I love creating videos. I love being on camera. I love connecting with my viewers and listeners in that way. It's always been a struggle because I never had a space for it. And so every single time I needed to record a video, I'd have to pull up my camera bag, set up my tripod, make sure my camera is charged, find the SD card somewhere, make sure I set up my microphone. Like, it was this 30-minute process to record a 10-minute video. And because of that friction, I never did it. So one of the ways that I'm solving that in 2019 is that I moved, because I work out of my apartment, and my old apartment had one bedroom. So I was working largely in my living room. And that's why I couldn't set up a permanent video space. Now I have a home office. I have that space set up, and I'm investing very heavily in that space to make sure that when I have an idea, I literally just get up, take one step, and I'm in my studio, and now I can record. And that reduction of friction is already improving the amount of video that I'm producing.
I love that. So a lot of it, like you were saying, you just got to reduce the friction. It's like looking at how you can solve the problem so you don't have to think about it as much, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that.
The minute you introduce that question of should I do it or not, you're more likely not.
Right. Well, I think it's interesting what you were saying about the action. Like you're already thinking about it, but if you just reduce the friction and take the action, then you haven't used up as much energy. I think a lot of times people they think that energy is just when we're moving our bodies, but it really is a lot in our mental and thinking.
Yeah.
And
Think about those. Think about those days where you travel as entrepreneurs. I'm sure you travel a lot, maybe to conferences or whatever it is. I always find it so fascinating that you can spend a day basically just sitting, because that is what you're doing. You're sitting on the plane, you're sitting on the bus, in the taxi, whatever it is. And then at the end of the day, you're exhausted. And it's because of the mental strain of the process of travel. Like, dealing with all this stuff is what actually drains your energy. And when you start to realize that, you understand that your mental energy is actually a lot more limited than your physical energy is. And that's because your physical energy, it comes largely from your body, and it comes largely from your muscles, and hydration, and sleep, and all of those things. And that's important. But your brain is also controlling everything else. And as a result, like, it's splitting the amount of energy it has already with keeping your body alive, and doing all the things it needs to do. Now you're telling it, hey, also deal with all this other nonsense. And all of a sudden you realize, oh, wow, I need to go back to sleep.
yeah. So are there some questions you can ask yourself to reduce that friction? Like, is there some simple steps to say, like, how do I not overthink this? Like, what kind of process do you go through?
So for me, it's very similar to what any entrepreneur has to do to build a business that can scale. It's about making sure that you do things once, and you build a system while you're doing it, so that you don't have to keep doing it. Though having to ask the question over and over and over again, you're just exerting the same mental strain every single time, as opposed to figuring it out one time, building a system so that the next time it's easier. And I find that so many of the rules we sort of learn as entrepreneurs apply to our personal lives as well. If we are trying to manage our finances, if we're dealing with tough relationships, if we are hard, like we don't communicate well, all of these things, like you can build mental systems and mental models and frameworks for how you navigate these issues when they pop up over and over again. And so identifying those things that pop up and treating it the same way, building a system for it. And then that allows you to operate within the constraints of the system rather than having to consider every single possible option every single time. That's going to reduce your mental strain quite a bit.
I love that. I think that's what a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners struggle with, because you're kind of that solopreneur. You may not have all those things in place, and we want to go fast, and we're after
Yeah.
trying to pay the bills and get that sale and get the business going, and not stopping and going, like, go fast but go slow at the same time. We struggle with this in our business all the time, and we're like slapping ourselves. Hey, we need to take a step back and make sure we have our systems in place. So we had one advice. It's like, run your business like you're setting it up as a franchise, that you're going to hand the whole thing off to someone else and they have to replicate it. So they have to have a whole booklet, to teach them, and there has to be systems in place for everything. And that's so smart. Would you say that also applies to accomplishing your goals? Like, you talk about how to crush your goals for the year. Is that really the same strategy, or are there some additional strategies to accomplish your goals?
Yeah, I mean it's more or less the same. So the big reveal in the book, and I had a lot of fun writing this because, in my opinion, self-help is done. Like it's an established thing. There's a process for changing your life. The problem isn't the knowledge of how to do it; it's actually doing it. It's the follow through piece of it. And so in the very beginning of my book, I believe in the first chapter, I specifically say, in this book, I'm going to teach you the secret to change your life. And then I reveal the system, which is figure out what you want, audit where you are in relation to that thing, and then change your behavior to be in line with that goal. That's it. That's the entire system.
All
And
right.
that's how you make any change.
I want to get that in people's heads. Say that same thing again. Get it in everybody's head, and they can write it
figure
down.
out figure out what it is you want, audit your current situation in relation to that end goal so you can get a reality of understanding where you're at, and then change your behavior. That's the system. And it's not sexy. There's nothing like super fancy about it. There's nothing even brand new. One of the most common comments I get, or reviews I've gotten on Amazon, just sort of as far as the early release, is there's nothing new in this book. And yes, there is nothing new in this book. But the point is, when you are trying to accomplish your goals, make a change in your life, make a change in your business, whatever it might be, the system is always the same. The stuff that we all sort of get confused by and stuck with, that's stuff we're adding to the system. That's mental. That's the us asking too many questions and making it way more complicated than it needs to be. The actual system is the same thing regardless of what it is you're trying to do. And if you can remember to just boil it back to that system as much as possible. Yes, there are nuances. Yes, there are specific things to consider for specific goals, like if you're trying to lose weight versus make more money or whatever it might be. But the actual system is the same. So just apply it, and you'll have a much better chance of accomplishing it.
All right, and I just want to speak to, you had said there's nothing new in this book, was one of the reviews that you got. So
Yeah.
I just want to say, though, that I just equate that to people going to the same religion. Let's just say it's a Baptist church, and they're listening online. Well, it's all the same book they're preaching out of,
Mm-hmm.
but one minister speaks to you different and says the words different than someone else, and that's who you connect with.
Yeah.
And that's why you watch them over someone else. And that's why someone's going to connect with your voice and your book. It may be the same content, but it's said in a different way, in a different tone. So for authors out there, don't feel like, oh man, there's a bunch of books on this, but it's your voice and it's your story, unique stories and take on it, that makes a big difference. And that's why Gregg's book is so great. You can hear his input now. He's saying it a little different. I'm taking notes. I'm thinking, I made him repeat a couple things, and I want my son to listen to this. Listen, it's about the strategies.
Yeah.
So I think it was great.
And I absolutely love that. And here's why. So outside of my podcast, which is in the self-help space, for the last 5 years, I've made my living primarily as a content strategist. So working with companies, working with individuals on their podcasts, videos, so on and so forth. The biggest piece of advice I find myself repeating over and over and over and over is that you need to have a point of view on your topic. Like that is the number one thing that gets people to love your content as opposed to being lukewarm. Now, all that point of view is, and it doesn't need to be complicated. All it is your voice on this topic. That is the point of view. When it comes to self-help, that is a very crowded space. I launched my show focused on changing day-to-day behavior because that is how I grew up. That is the way my parents raised me. That's what being an immigrant to the US taught me. That's what seeing my dad, who his first job here was picking apples on an apple orchard. By the time he passed, he was doing very well, comfortably middle class. That's what his story taught me. And so that's the point of view I brought to the table. And that's what's allowed it to pop and really work and connect with people, rather than me just repeating the same lines and saying the same things, never really bringing my personal story and my personal point of view into it. And no one would want to listen to that because Lewis Howes already does it really well. Like Tony Robbins does that really well. So why should my voice exist if I'm going to say the same thing Tony is saying?
Exactly.
Right. Well, and bringing you into it, I think really helps. And I think the way you said it in the beginning really hit with me too, because it isn't really, like you said, it's not about the motivation, it's about the systems.
Mm-hmm.
And we already have the motivation. That's why we started to do the action, but
Yeah.
it's about making sure you do the right system and not overthinking it. So the tiny leaps, big changes, that's what it really is about, what you said, day-to-day actions that you change so that in the future, the big change happens, right?
Yes.
The tiny steps.
Yep.
Yeah, and I love that you brought that up because one of the things that I've noticed, and I've been hosting this show for 3 years now, one of the things I notice people conveniently forget is the big changes part of it. They hear tiny leaps and they think, oh, well, I should just pursue small change and like play small and my goals should be small and blah, blah, blah. And that's not it. You
Right.
should aim for the biggest possible things you can go for. Like I am one of the most ambitious people that you will ever meet. If I were to tell you the things in my head as far as what I want to accomplish, you would try to commit me to a place because you'd think there's no way this is okay. But my point is, aim for big because big is what leads to actual change. Big is what enables you to help others. Big is what allows you to do the things you actually want to do. The tiny leaps part is just about focusing on day-to-day behavior so that you don't get overwhelmed by big. Because when you try to climb Everest and you've never climbed a mountain before, you look at it and you say, there's no way I can do that. But if you focus on just figuring out what the rope is for, you can wrap your head around that. And then you do the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And after 3,000 steps, all of a sudden you're at the top of Everest and you're like, oh, that I did this. And now I feel confident in myself. Now I feel proud. Now I have all of the things that help me to make the next big change. But then you find yourself at the bottom of Everest again. And you're like, oh, I need to be humble. And I was great and I did this big thing, but now I'm at the bottom again. I've got to start over and do this other big thing. And it's just this really, really interesting cycle that gets us to continuously aim for more and be better, but allows us to actually take the actions day to day because we are avoiding overwhelm.
Yeah.
I love that. That's a great thing to end on. So tell us, Gregg, where can people find you? What's your podcast name so they can go and subscribe? And where can they get your book, Tiny Leaps, Big Changes?
Yeah, so the book is available everywhere. So wherever you get your books, Amazon, Target, Walmart, Barnes & Noble, all those places. There's also an audiobook that I did the reading for, and of course the ebook. And it's called Tiny Leaps, Big Changes. If you would like to listen to the podcast, it's the same name. So wherever you listen to your podcast, you can find it there. And I would actually love to connect with you directly. So find me on Instagram at Gregg Clunis. I respond to every single DM I get, and I'm a big fan of keeping conversations going. So if you heard this, there was something that popped out to you, something that really sort of connected with you, or if you just think I'm an idiot, totally fine. I'd still love to have the conversation with you. So give me a follow, send a DM, and I'd love to take it further.
Terrific. Well, thanks for joining us, Gregg. We learned a lot, so stay with it. Take those tiny changes and dream big, make giant goals while you're there. So we want to remind you, speaking of podcasts, subscribe to our podcast. So make sure you subscribe. I forgot to mention that in the beginning. So we'd love to hear from you. We love our subscribers. We always have awesome guests that help change your life and make a big impact on you. So we always learn something, so we think you learned something too. And again, if you're looking at becoming an author, please reach out to us at eliteonlinepublishing.com. You can check out our website. We got a lot of information there, and just hit the contact button and you can fill out a survey form. We look forward to seeing you next time right here at Elite Expert Insider.
Bye.
If you'd like to create the most powerful advertising tool for your business, contact us at eliteonlinepublishing.com, where we will help you create, publish, and make your book a #1 bestseller, and show you how to get new leads and more revenue for your business. If you'd like to check us out on our Facebook page, we have a free book for you as our gift. Just go and click Free Book. Remember to subscribe and leave a comment for our podcast. We would love to hear from you.